This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Jeff Malinoff. And we got some stuff on the agenda today. We got some more news about Antonio Brown and whether teams are really interested or not. Who are the three teams that were first interested? We'll find out who those are. As well as some upsets in the world of basketball, as well as more drama, not just in LA, but also in the city of Boston. We'll get on that as well. And, of course, we've had multiple franchise tags as the franchise tag deadline ends today. So we will hopefully get some more as the show progresses. But I wanted to talk about first things first. The Denver Broncos have said publicly that they are not one of the three teams that are contacted the Steelers about Antonio Brown, contrary to the reports that it was them as well as the Cardinals and the Raiders. So with that being said, I think I said this yesterday, but I'll say it again. If any of those three teams was the best fit for Antonio Brown, it was the Broncos. As I would, like, John Gruden is a guy that likes to run the ball and is a power runner type guy, and he's a old school type of guy. He doesn't. Maybe he's adapting to the passing game. I'm not sure, but I just feel like Antonio Brown will not be utilized as much when it comes to the Raiders' offense, just due to the history of John Gruden. He loves his power backs and stuff like that. As for the Cardinals, Josh Rosen can't throw the ball deep, and that's Antonio Brown's bread and butter, is getting deep and getting open deep down the field. And Josh Rosen doesn't really have that arm and accuracy for that circumstance. So that's something to think about. And then you look at the Broncos, and they have Joe Flacco, who can only throw the ball deep, really, in hindsight, because he has that huge cannon. Accuracy can be a little off at times, but he still has a huge arm, and that would be perfect for Antonio Brown, because you can just throw it up there 50 yards to him, and he could probably get it 8 times out of 10, honestly. So with that being said, if it really is not the Broncos, I don't like the other two options for Antonio Brown, personally. And then basically, I think the three official teams that were announced as the contact to Antonio Brown have been the Raiders, the Redskins, and the Titans, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, even the Titans have their stake and a claim in it. And I would understand why the Titans will go into it. They only had 7 receiving touchdowns this previous season, or one of they are. I just know for a fact they are one of the lowest team, the team with the least amount of touchdowns by a wide receiver. So adding a guy who ties for the league leading in receiving touchdowns would be a huge help for not just the Titans, but for Marcus Mariota as well, to keep his job, to be honest with you, because honestly, everyone's saying that Marcus Mariota is on thin ice there, and I would happen to agree. That is a story going out, and just a concern for the Titans. Like, are they going to move on from him? Are they going to keep him? The story there is unclear, but adding Antonio Brown, if they do manage that, I will say the most interesting aspect of that would have to be they would probably give Marcus Mariota another year, another opportunity to see what he can do with one of the best wide receivers in the game. If he can't do it, then if he struggles, then you know it's time to move on from him. So that makes sense if they get Antonio Brown and giving Marcus Mariota another shot. And then as for the Redskins, another kind of concern if Antonio Brown manages to be traded there. They don't have a quarterback at the moment. I don't know where they're going to end up free agent-wise, or they're going to draft one. I'm not entirely sure what their plan is. But with the question mark at the quarterback position, I don't think that will be the best place for Antonio Brown. So, obviously, that's just a huge concern. Because the big question mark of who's going to be throwing on the ball. Because if you don't know who's throwing on the ball, how do you know he's going to be good? He's going to succeed, at least, in this new team. I mean, granted, he's one of those guys that can make any quarterback look good, but there's got to be a limit to what you can really do with little talent at the quarterback position. And then, last but not least, the Raiders with Derek Carr. Now, I already said my piece about the Raiders and how John Gruden is more of a power running back, pounding the rock kind of guy. So, I just think the Raiders are not the best spot for Antonio Brown in general. That's just my take on it. So, with that being said, there's still a lot of unanswered questions of where Antonio Brown will go. He's probably going to be dealt this month. That sounds like it's maybe not a foregone conclusion per se, but definitely a most likely possibility. That's what reports are saying. That's what people are most likely looking at. And one of the most likely contestants, if you will, for Antonio Brown, is contestants the right word, or is it the most likely? What's the word would be good? Not contestant, but the most likely pursuer of Antonio Brown. There's the word, pursuer, if that's a word. Hopefully it is. Pursuer for Antonio Brown would be the 49ers, and they have not contacted, no one from the Niners organization has reportedly talked to the Steelers about it. So, with that being said, it looks like he's not going to be going to the 49ers, at least at this moment in time. And that's where a lot of people said he was going to go. I mean, he even showed a picture on his Instagram of him photoshopping himself with the 49ers jersey. So it's not like just a little rumor. It seemed like that's where he wanted to go, and that seemed like where the 49ers were going to push for him. But regardless, those are the main three teams that have talked to him, the Titans, the Raiders, and the Redskins. Two NFC and one AFC team. Obviously, they're going to go with the best offer possible. And if I know the Redskins, and I know Dan Snyder, who overpays a lot of people in the free agent market, he's been absolutely known for that. I mean, looking in the year 2000, he got Bruce Smith and Deion Sanders. The infamous quote from that is in 2000, he got the 1992 All-Pro team. But again, it was the year 2000. That was 8 years ago. So that was past the time where you should have went for them. He was just getting big names, and they didn't pan out. And, I mean, he signed Adam Marchelletto. Jeez, Adam Marchelletto. What else? Who else did he sign? Albert Hainsworth, that infamous $100 million contract that got him legitimately nothing. Legitimately nothing as in he had the worst work ethic anyone's ever seen. So, I mean, that just shows to you how disappointing he was with that organization, with that huge contract he got. So, with that being said, the Redskins are that type of team that would trade away their future for Antonio Brown. And that in general is basically what I'm predicting. I'm assuming they're going to try to oversell or overpay for Antonio Brown, not in pay and actual money, because they will do that eventually. But they will trade maybe even multiple first-round picks for him because of the fact that they just are known for this stuff. They're known for overdoing it. Remember, they traded a bunch. The Redskins traded a king's ransom, if you will, for that number 2 pick to get RG3 back in the day. And at first it worked out. They made the playoffs his rookie year, and he did great. But then they overrode him. They overplayed him, and he kind of crumbled, and his knee injuries and all that spoke for themselves. And then the whole weird obsession by Dan Snyder to force the team to play him and stuff like this. It was all a weird circumstance for sure, based off the whole situation. And with that being said, Antonio Brown's future team for next season is still a huge question mark. And I really don't know where he's most likely to go, because it's totally up to the Steelers where Antonio Brown's future lies. And again, it's going to be extremely interesting to see how that happens and how he will be accepted by his future teammates and all this other things. It's just, there's a lot of different aspects people aren't really looking at overall, based on the fact that he kind of had some problems with the Steelers teammates. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, he's kind of already signed it off on him, especially. And is he going to have those same problems with his new team? Let's face it, probably not, but that's still something to think about, because, I mean, he's kind of, let's be honest, he's kind of volatile. And he's an unbelievable player. I'm not taking that away from him at all. But I think that's some concern with some teams, that he's a little bit of a head case, a little bit of a drama queen. But he really makes it up for it on the field and how he plays there. But again, this is so, it's a gamble for sure, based off just his, I don't know if the ego is the right word, or just his, I think that just he's had some problems with teammates in the past, so it's just it's known to be a fact. So we'll see where he ends up. I'm really looking forward to when all this is actually going to go down, or allowed to go down, when the season officially begins in a couple weeks, or maybe is it next week? It is next week, isn't it? Next week is when the season officially begins, and all this free agency stuff is going to go down, and all this trading is going to go down. It's a very exciting time for sure, and you got to love it. This is what you got to love about sports in general. It's just when you look at the offseason, a lot of people are like, oh, just had the season start already. But when we look at what the NFL in general, just the NFL by itself, they are they're probably the most entertaining offseason in sports. I would say basketball is up there as well, but they're more of a trade deadline thing, much like baseball. And for that, I say baseball really needs to step up their offseason. We already went through that countless times of how that's broken. But regardless, we will move on from that. And we will take a short break. But when we come back, we'll talk about the franchise tags and who actually got set up in the franchise tags. Who's franchise tagged, and when the deadline is today. So we'll see who ends up getting next franchise tag sooner rather than later. And we'll get it right on that when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Just finished up our talk about Antonio Brown and his future and where it lies. Now let's get into the franchise tagging, because the deadline is today, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And gosh, I'm really bad at like time zones and stuff. But see, Eastern time zone is 3 hours from Pacific time, so basically we're looking at a 1 p.m. East Pacific time deadline for the franchise tagging of the players. But we already have a pretty good amount of franchise tags that we kind of already expected, but, you know, they still need to be talked about. Most notably, the Dallas Cowboys have franchise tagged DeMarcus Lawrence, and they've said that there's no talk about there's talk about a long-term contract, but they're not close to a long-term contract. So it seems to me that DeMarcus Lawrence is going to go down the path of Le'Veon Bell, where he's going to get franchised constantly until it's time to say, you know what, it's time to move on, or it's time to pay the man. So we'll see how DeMarcus Lawrence plays this season, and if he does play well, he's probably going to be franchise tagged again. I'm pretty sure the limit is 3 or 4 times you can be franchise tagged. And then they have a serious decision to make in Dallas, whether to pay him the big bucks or let him walk and save some money. Well, maybe save some money is a strong term, because he's one of the best players at his position on the defensive side. So it's not like you're wasting money by paying that guy a lot because of the fact how talented he is. But I don't know. It just always seems a big question mark when it comes down to when a guy gets franchise tagged multiple times. Perfect example, Le'Veon Bell. It usually ends with him being a free agent after the multiple franchise tags and finding big money somewhere else, because the team either doesn't want to pay him, or they're hesitant to pay him, or they want to pay him a certain amount of money, but he doesn't want that much money. He doesn't want that low amount of money that he considers as low, and asks for more money, and then a whole dispute goes over it. Then all that controversy breaks out. But regardless, I do think that DeMarcus Lawrence is a huge addition to that defense. He's arguably he is their best defensive player. And I'm going to be honest with you, everyone says how good the Dallas Cowboys defense is. I've always last couple of years, I've thought of them as overrated. And I'll tell you why. One of the problems with the Jaguars defense this last year was because they were on the field way too long. And when you're on the field for an extended period of time, an unnecessary extended period of time, and I say that because Blake Bortles kept going 3-and-outs or interceptions, and the Jaguars defense was just exhausted on the field, and they were going to collapse sooner or later because they were on the field so constantly throughout the game. With the Cowboys, however, when you look at Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, and even adding Amari Cooper to that, they were getting first downs. They were extending their time of possession. They were getting the longest time of possession between the two teams during their games. That was a fact. And with them on the field for 15 minutes or 20 minutes in it, or even 25 to 30 minutes, that's as much time as the defense gets a chance to rest and be fresh when they get back onto the field. It's the exact opposite when an offense does it, because they don't want to be cold and they want to be in a movement. So when your offense is, especially with Ezekiel Elliott, who's running like 5 to 6 yards a carry and getting first downs after 2 to 3 carries, and you're not worried about a fourth down as much. And of course, like I said, and then Dak Prescott with his like 5-yard slant routes to Amari Cooper, for example, or Cole Beasley or wherever else he's throwing to, he's getting those first downs. Short and steady wins the race in football, in my mind. And when you're getting those 5-10-yard plays every two downs, your defense is getting more rest. Your defense is getting more relaxed, and they're able to make bigger plays when they hit the field because they're rested, because they're relaxed. The Jaguars couldn't rest because every time they were sitting on the bench, they took one sip of their water and are trying to get a breath, and Bortles throws an interception, or they go 3-and-out and they have to go back onto the field after 2 to 3 minutes of break. And that's not enough for a defense. The defense really needs to have a break. The defense gets tired. I'm not blaming how the defense played for the Jaguars' lulls last season. Honestly, they're still in a top defense in my mind. It's just because they are continuously on the field longer than the offense should let them be, because it's all up to the offense at that time of possession. If they're getting first downs if they get like 10 to 15 first downs a game, that's huge for the defense to get more rest and more time to really, big plays, because you're fresh, you're not as exhausted, you're not getting those cramps, you're not getting one of these things or the other, you're not going, let's go back onto the field. You're not really demoralized because you just your offense just turned the ball over. You're in a mindset in where, okay, our team is playing well on the offensive side. They gave us they literally just went on the field for 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, maybe even more than that, depending. They drove the ball down the field, and we're all ready to go to get that ball back to them and let them do their work again. But when your offense doesn't contribute and they're on the field for 30 to 45 seconds of game time, not just like adding the huddle and stuff, just actual as soon as the ball's hiked to when the play is down, then you get frustrated. And that's what happened to the Jaguars. And the Dallas Cowboys were the exact opposite. They had Ezekiel Elliott running for multiple first downs in the game. They had Dak Prescott throwing those short routes to Amari Cooper and Cole Beasley to get those first downs. And if they needed to, they would get big plays. And those big plays would actually hype up the defense because of the fact they scored on a big play or something like that. So with the Cowboys, their defense relied on how productive their offense was. And that's just the case. When you have arguably the best running back in the NFL in Ezekiel Elliott, and a not too shabby quarterback in Dak Prescott who can get those accurate short route passes down, you have a recipe for success on defense regardless of the talent you have on defense, because the talent you have on defense is not that great on the Dallas Cowboys side. I'm just being honest. Demarcus Lawrence is a whole different subject. He's a monster. He's a beast. He's the best player on that team by far. But the rest of the defense is, I would say, average. Maybe a tad above average for some guys, but overall, I would say just average because of the fact they are rested. They're ready to play in a sense because of the fact that they've been waiting patiently for their team to finish up their drive, and their drive lasts usually a long period of time. So it's more of a relaxing base for their defense rather than a frustrating, demoralizing pace where their team just lost the ball from a careless turnover or something of that nature, and now they're playing in more of an angry fashion, in a frustrated fashion, rather than a we're helping the team fashion. We're on the field because our team sucks kind of thing. That's just how I see how the defenses work when it comes down to a good quarterback and a bad quarterback and a good offense, because you got to have an offense that, like, if your offense is on the field in the game for 10 to 15 minutes time of possession, maybe 15 to 20, your defense is going to do better. If your team is on the field for 3 to 4 minutes a game, your defense is going to be exhausted. Your defense is going to be on the field way more than the offense is, and that just leads to more mistakes. That means more mental errors. It just leads to more failure. And honestly, you got to put the defensive struggles on how the Jaguars played on the offense and how on Blake Bortles. That's why they're going to cut ties with Blake Bortles most likely, and they're going to go with Nick Foles, who they know can produce. But again, I said this yesterday. We don't know. This might have been on a football podcast. I'm not sure, but I'm saying him being a 16-week season quarterback is still unknown to me. I know he's been starter before, but his recent success has been in a shortened season. So seeing him in an extended season with a new team and a new offense and all this kind of thing really puts into perspective, like, this is where he will be tested the most. And that's just how I see it, is because of the fact that your offense equals to a good defense. Because if you're maybe that's a little strong, but a contributing offense, a good offense that can get first downs and that can be on the field for a long time equals to great defenses. That's just my take on it. Moving on from the Cowboys tag to the Texans tag, as they have franchise tag Clowney as well, their former number 1 overall pick, which is the smart move to keep him with J.J. Watt, which is probably was expected too. He's been playing solid. He's been playing pretty darn well over the course of his couple of years. He kind of started off a little rusty with his injuries concerns, but recently he's really stepped up his game and been a huge help with J.J. Watt on that defensive side. That helped them get to their record of last year was, I believe, was 11-5, if I'm not mistaken. And so he's a serious contributor to that defensive side. And again, that defense was good because of how good the offense was. That's just, again, my points being proven. And with that also, you got to look at, are they going to sign him to a big deal? Is it when J.J. Watt's most likely career ends in a year or so? I'm assuming if he's coming back this next season after this season, they're going to franchise tag Clowney again, and they're just going to wait until Clowney's done, or not Clowney, excuse me, J.J. Watt's done, and then sign him to a massive deal, or they're going to give Deshaun Watson the massive deal, because it's just one of those facts of who are you going to give the massive deal to when your biggest massive deal, J.J. Watt, is gone and retired. Because I think he's on his last legs. He's been injury prone. He's got some things, but he's still a solid player, no doubt about it. He gets the job done. So it's not like he's like just there to as an old guy in the way of another guy's opportunity. No, he's still playing at a high level. It's J.J. Watt, for crying out loud. But again, like I said, Clowney's been franchise tagged, so he's going to stay there. And probably the Texans are the favorites to make it back to the playoffs. Maybe I wouldn't say they're going to take the AFC South. I wouldn't say that for certain because the Colts are in it. And if the Jaguars do acquire Nick Foles, a guy who can get those first downs, like I said, their defense will be a lot better. So there's going to be I think there's going to be a team race for the AFC South. And, you know, just looking at all the three of those teams, the Jags and the Texans and the Jaguars, maybe the Titans can pull us off. If they get Antonio Brown, maybe I'll definitely put them in consideration. But right now, if I had to make a guess of who like the toughest division is, I think the AFC South is making a run for it because, like, yeah, the NFC North is pretty competitive. I know Packers and Lions aren't doing so well, and the Vikings are pretty disappointing. The NFC South is always a competitive thing, but three of the teams had losing records last season. NFC South is kind of getting there with both the Rams, Seahawks, and maybe the 49ers coming back up after losing Jimmy Garoppolo. They're getting him back next season. We'll see how they do in free agency. They're of course, and their starting running back is healthy, so they might make some noise as well. So we'll see how everything turns out. But regardless, this is all leading to, like I said, the Texans are still looking to regain some momentum and keeping their spot in the playoffs and a spot as the champions of the AFC South. They're looking to retain that title next season, of course. And then the next biggest one is the Chiefs franchise tagging Dee Ford. Dee Ford is obviously remembered last season for being the guy that was offsides during the game-sealing interception. The game-sealing interception he was offsides for, which cost them that interception. So it wasn't game-sealing, which led to the overtime loss to the New England Patriots, which led to the New England Patriots winning their record sixth Super Bowl twice in 3 years. Now, if that interception did actually happen and the Chiefs did go on to the Super Bowl, that would be the first time since Super Bowl IV they've been in the Super Bowl. So that would have been 49 years of from one Super Bowl to the next for one team. So maybe they'll make it next year. I mean, they're still a very dominant, powered offense. They're not losing anybody, and they're keeping Dee Ford obviously on their franchise tag. So there's a lot of positive to think of when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs and them remaining the top of the AFC West. I think the Raiders still need a lot of work before they can be up there, and the Chargers are still a formidable foe, but with their controversial defensive scheme against the Patriots, it really shows that this team still has a lot of flaws and are maybe a one-dimensional type team or a single-minded type, coached single-mindedly, and not thinking about like, oh, this is bound to work elsewhere. That's kind of like what feels like their head coach's mindset. So we'll see how the Chargers rebound from a very disappointing divisional round matchup against the Patriots. Will that affect them in the future? Maybe. It's a possibility. But again, we'll see how everything turns out. But it still seems like the AFC West still belongs to the Chiefs at the moment. But with that, we're going to take another short break. And when we come back, we'll be talking about some basketball. And an upset that happened in basketball, as well as more controversy and drama in the locker room, but not with just the Lakers. It's with someone else in the city of Boston. We'll be right back right after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Finishing up the day here, talking about basketball. You know, actually, speaking of which, I was watching the MLS match where they said it was 18 degrees, and I saw the infamous picture also of the referee just covered in frost and snow. It looks like he was the guy from Home Alone. Man, was it Home Alone? Where he was like all frozen, like he got all the like ice on his like mustache and stuff like that. Am I thinking of the right movie? I think I am. But that was March 2nd. It was between the Colorado Rapids and the it was the game in Colorado, the Colorado Rapids, and just flakes of snow just falling on the ground, and everyone just looks like they're just freezing their tails off out there. And so if you want to check this out, go to the Colorado Rapids Instagram, just Colorado Rapids, and you'll probably see it elsewhere too. But you'll see the referee with his eyebrows frosted. His entire hair is white of snow and frost. He looks like he's aging, like rapidly. You know, in like those movies where they rapidly age, their hair turns all gray and losing it. It looks a lot like that. It looks like straight from like a movie where the villain try to take the essence of people to be young again and be in his prime, and it's starting to be the reverse process. He's failing at it, and he's growing older and older as it's continuing. I know that's really specific, but that's just how I see it. That's how I think about it, because I love stuff like that where they're like, oh, my plan didn't work. What are the odds, you know? But moving on from that to basketball, we have some interesting news, not about the Lakers, because we thought that would be all that is left, but there's still more to come from that, don't worry. But moving on from that, let's just continue. The Boston Celtics have their own little problems. And here's what I mean. Ever since the news about, or the rumors that is, of Kyrie Irving being heading off to New York when he's a free agent, and he got upset by that, he's been very distant from everybody else in the league, or on his team, excuse me. And where like people said he's disengaged, he's distant from all the players except for Tatum, who they have the same agent, so it's kind of different there. But the fact is, he wanted to be a leader of a team. Then he does the phone call to LeBron to apologize for his just how he acted. And now the disengagement and the hating the fact that people are talking about him in New York and then all this happening, it makes me feel like it's all but certain that they're gone, that he's going to be gone from Boston, first of all. And him being disengaged from the teammates is actually pretty, disappointing in a way, just because of the fact that you were supposed to be the leader of this team, and you're kind of, how do I describe it? I don't want to say abandoning him on the forefront, because he's having one of the best seasons of his career, in all honesty. But when it comes to his leadership qualities, it doesn't seem like they're there in Boston. He doesn't want them. He doesn't care for the leadership in Boston. It just seems more along the lines of he's just there to finish up the season. Doesn't matter how far they go, and he's out to New York at the next site of dawn. You know what I mean? It just seems more along the lines that he instantly regretted. Well, maybe not instantly regretted, but he does regret going to Boston, and he seems like he's off to New York, maybe even LA. People were saying, oh, he's going to go to New York, but he might go to LA and reunite with LeBron, which in turn would absolutely 100% just PO all Cleveland Cavaliers fans, because that's exactly what they had in Cleveland. Both LeBron and Kyrie, they won a championship. But then Kyrie wanted to be on his own, and now this happens. It's just one of those things where it's just this of course would happen in Cleveland, This of course would be the detriment to the Cleveland fan base, because of the fact that it's just a disappointment overall. If you're in the Cleveland Cavaliers and you have two of the top, let's say they're two of the top 10 players in the NBA, I would agree. I would say so. And then you have them one of them leave to go to greener pastures in theory. Then he regrets leaving, wants to reunite with the guy that he left the team for the reason he left the team, your team for. But now that guy that he left the team for that he wants to reunite with is on another team. Can that be any more unlucky for a fan base? You talk about just unfortunate situations for a franchise. This, if it happens, this is a big if. If he does, Kyrie that is, move from Boston and goes to LA and signs with the Lakers, this is the biggest the biggest BS move of just a slap in the face to one franchise of all time. It's really hard to describe how to say it, but just it's like a screw job. That's basically what it is. It's just a very unfair situation to happen to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah, they had one championship, but after all they've been through after that, it doesn't seem like that was enough, because they could have won more championships with Kyrie. I think a lot of people think that. And also, one of the big factors is that, if you see them both, if the Lakers have Kyrie and LeBron, and they both come to LA, Kyrie, maybe even LeBron, you can even put LeBron, he got cheered last time, but he might get booed now this time, that he's going to get the worst booing of his career. Kyrie Irving especially is going to be public enemy number one. He's going to be like when LeBron went to Miami, because this is betraying them. There's one thing you want to be on your own and being the man, and you can't do that with LeBron. I get that and wants to move on. But then changing your mind and going to the team he's on now, I really don't like to talk down about stuff like this, but to me, that's a sign of a coward. That's a sign of a Kevin Durant type of thing. You can't get it done on your own, or you regret where you are, and you leave for a better team overall, and it just seems pretty disappointing if you're a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers to see all this go down. And it's just, I really don't know how else to describe it besides like angry and disappointing if you are a Cleveland Cavalier. And maybe you're upset at these players, absolutely. But I think a big question that people should think about is, should you be even more upset at the owner of the team, who said to LeBron basically that this is my team, I'll do what I want, when it came to trading Kyrie Irving in the first place? So does this all lead to the fact that the owner of the team moved Kyrie Irving because he basically LeBron told him not to? It was basically out of spite, it felt like. So do you blame LeBron for leaving? Not a lot of people do. They understood the situation, why he left, because of the fact he couldn't get along with the ownership. But do you blame him for Kyrie moving to LA? Because I think you can. I really think you can blame him. And the reason you can blame him for them both in LA is because he drove them both away. One, literally, he traded them. And the other, LeBron wanted to stay, but there was just a power struggle. Maybe power struggle is a strong word, but it was just more along the lines of just him thinking he's above LeBron, that he's better than LeBron. Maybe not better than LeBron, but just like LeBron can't walk over him, and he had to make a power move, and he's power hungry and all this other things. So to that I say, yeah, that's about, you can blame easily the owner of the Cavaliers for what is going on right now. For the loss of Kyrie and Kyrie's potential, this is still potential, move to LA to reunite with LeBron, which he could have stayed in Cleveland if he got along with management, LeBron that is, and this would not be an issue for Cleveland. But the fact is, Cleveland just lost them both. This seems on the terms of just, like, can any other team have this much bad luck? No, okay, that's not even that. Can any city have this much bad luck with multiple franchises? The Cleveland Indians been in multiple World Series, like you could like 1995, 1997, and 2016. They all lost the World Series. Braves, they lost in the Game 7 to the Florida Marlins, where they had a chance to seal it, but they couldn't seal the deal in the pitching when it came down to sealing it there. And then you also look at 2016, where they tied the game, and it was almost going to be theirs, but they, again, let it go. They just didn't capitalize on the opportunity, and the Cubs ran away with it. So that's just one franchise. And then you look at the Cavaliers, and we already spoke about them. And the Browns, do I really need to describe what they've been through? The drive, this is before they even moved out. This is the drive, the fumble, and then the move to Baltimore, the first franchise move to Baltimore. Then they get their team back. They draft Tim Couch in the first overall pick of their expansion, or their first pick as a team. And then they go downhill from there. They only make the playoff appearance with Kelly Holcomb as their quarterback and couldn't get the ball. They thought they made a play out of bounds to continue the game, but the clock kept running and the time ran out, and they lost barely to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Tommy Maddox. Tommy Maddox, remember him? The XFL MVP. But regardless, it's one of those things where everything that can go wrong for just one franchise went wrong, but 3 franchises in one city all went wrong. Yes, Cleveland Cavaliers won 1 championship, but that championship led to this downfall of the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. So what does this mean for the future of the Cleveland Cavaliers? Who knows? But they're probably enjoying LeBron's downfall with the Lakers, as they just lost to the Clippers, and fans were just booing and hollering and hissing at the Lakers, and Patrick Beverley was loving it. There was a point where LeBron's defensive defensive work ethic was in question because Kuzma just pushed him towards the perimeter three that was getting shot at the end of the game. And it just shows that there was kind of like almost like a give up kind of scenario in this. And it just, and then Kuzma with his ankle injury, it came back negative, but it seems like he's going to be out for a period of time. And it just seems like the Lakers are just doomed for this season, that is. Once they move into next season, it might be a different story, but this season seems like a lost season in LeBron's career. That's going to be a dark point in his career, no doubt about it. And it seems like there's other people that are thinking Luke Walton will be fired after this terrible season is over for the Lakers. So we'll see how everything happens. Maybe they'll turn it around next season, worst to first kind of situation, which is very possible. So we'll see how all that turns out. But that should do it for today. Oh, one more thing. Suns beat the Bucks in an upset with a healthy front for the healthy starting five with Giannis and Bledsoe and Middleton, all those guys on the Bucks side. So that was a nice big shocker from yesterday. I mean, Giannis still had a double-double, 21-13, still putting up big numbers, but just losing to a inferior Suns team, I don't think this is anything to worry about if you're the Bucks or anything, but still, I think a cool win for the Suns to get some confidence and say, hey, we beat the number one team in the East and the number one team in the NBA, so that's something to go on. But again, that should be our show today. Thank you so much for joining us, and tune us in tomorrow for our Again Sports, and today we're also doing a football and fantasy football podcast, so make sure you tune into that. But as always, I'm Jeff Malinoff, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.